Welcome to Breaking News. I'm Miley and bring for you the latest news on today. President Donald Trump, fresh off a tense visit to Paris on Tuesday, fired up a string of tweets attacking French President Emmanuel Macron for floating the idea of a self-reliant European military and the country's wine tariffs, while accusing Macron of sweeping at Trump's nationalism to distract from his own shortcomings. Emmanuel Macron suggests building its own army to protect Europe against the US, China, and Russia. Trump began in his first tweet, but it was Germany in World Wars I and II. How did that work out for France? They were starting to learn German in Paris before the US came along, pay for NATO or not. Make France great again, the US president wrote in a follow-up post on Twitter later Tuesday morning. Trump's Tuesday morning tweet was his second over the past 5 days that accused Macron of suggesting European nations need more robust militaries to protect themselves from the US, a mischaracterization of what the French president actually said. Macron, in an interview with Europe 1, suggested that Europe needs to better position itself militarily against an increasingly aggressive Russia. Macron also lamented a U.S. decision to withdraw from a treaty with Russia that prohibited the manufacture of intermediate-range nuclear missiles. The main victim of that move, Macron said, was Europe and its security. I believe in the project of a sovereign Europe. We want to protect Europe if we don't decide to have a true European army. He said, we have to have a Europe that can defend itself alone and without only relying on the United States in a more sovereign manner. We should protect ourselves when it comes to China, Russia, and even the United States of America. The French president also said, alluding to the decision to pull out the missile treaty with Russia. Trump has repeatedly called for NATO allies to rely less on the US for their defense and has railed against nations that he says do not put enough of their gross domestic product toward defense spending. Trump has regularly demanded that NATO countries increase their defense spending to a higher percentage of their GDP, forcing the issue at last summer's NATO summit by seeming to threaten to pull the US out of the fact if spending targets were not met. Macron, in his interview, agreed that Europe should become less dependent on the US for its military. But just after landing in Paris on Friday, Trump took to Twitter to call Macron's comments very insulting, adding a new layer of tension to the weekend ceremonies. But the two leaders discussed the issue during Trump's visit. Trump, who owns vineyards in the U.S., also hit Macron on Tuesday for what he said were unfair tariffs on wine. France makes excellent wine, so does the U.S., he wrote, claiming that France has tougher barriers and higher tariffs in place for importing U.S. wine than the U.S. has for importing French wine. The president also responded to what was perceived to be a dig at Trump's self-proclaimed nationalism. He said that Macron were using Trump as a foil to distract from lacking approval ratings and rising unemployment. And this story appears in Breaking News. A newswoman on a later tweets and turns around Trump attack against Macron. Subscribe and follow us along with more about Trump administration policy and the situation of election. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the duration of today's program. Thank you for watching.